Good afternoon. Welcome to a very challenging talk today. I just started a video and I decided to redo it to try to be more clear in what I'm going to say on parasitic entities, which is a topic that particularly people in the spiritual community really don't like to talk about. They like to only stay positive, talk about power animals and angels and spirit guides, but don't want to then talk about the other side of it, which are parasitic entities, demonic beings, and things that are here to steal your energy. And so it's a very important topic to deal with. It's a very important topic to delve into because I would assume anywhere from 90 to 95% of the population, maybe even higher, has some sort of parasitic entity on some level, at least disrupting their energy, if not disrupting their entire life. And once these things are cleaned out, your life will change. Your health will change. Everything will change if you can clear one of these out of your energy structure. So I'm going to talk a bit today of at least as I've come to understand them, what they are, some different types of entities, because some are very strong, some are a little weak, how they affect you, and how we have to deal with, you might say, removing them. I first got focus on this from ancient Egypt and my study there of ancient Egyptian healing, which was very similar to the way a lot of native Indian medicine men that I was with worked. And that was a 3-step process. And when the hieroglyphs were first deciphered, modern medicine saw that the 3rd step of Egyptian healing was very similar to Western medicine, and so they accepted this great knowledge of Egyptian medical understanding. But they rejected the other 2 types of Egyptian medicine as being stupid and archaic and lost in the Dark Ages. But it's modern medicine that's in the Dark Ages by not actually understanding the various levels of the human being. And in ancient Egypt, the 3 levels of healing are: 1, to first take your patient and find if they have a parasitic entity or demonic being and remove it. Because if that is not removed, if you don't first remove that energy destroying being, then it doesn't matter what healing you're going to do afterwards, the entity is going to take a lot of the energy. So it doesn't matter whether you're taking herbs or acupuncture or getting direct healing or having some kind of powerful healing in any form, the entity gets most of it. Hence, the person almost never gets well. The second stage after the Egyptians would do that would be to work with sound. And they would use sound frequencies to harmonize the energy structure. One of the reasons the parasitic entity got in the first place is that the sound vibration, the vibrational state of the person has dropped, allowing a lower vibrational being to, you might say, break its way in. And so now you want to bring the vibration through sound back up so that you now have a protective shell again. And then the 3rd and final stage would be the things we might think of as all the different forms of normal healing that we would come into today on all levels, whether they be, I can say herbs, acupuncture, homeopathy, Western medicine, surgeries, teeth pulling, cold packs on the knee, anything that could be classified as helping or healing any type of injury or wound. That's not going to work as long as there is a parasitic being stealing the energy. So you have to remember that when you ask what is a parasitic being, well, a parasitic being is a being that you can't see that is eating your energy. Just as an intestinal worm or an intestinal parasite that we pick up is living off our energy, usually our food, and for example in the stomach. And it does so without us even really knowing that it's happening. We don't know we have one other than by certain symptoms, either lack of energy, weight loss, pain in the stomach, various problems that are occurring. We can only potentially guess that we have one. And back in hundreds of years ago, regular intestinal parasitic cleanses were an important part of the year, using things like wormwood and black walnut hulls and all sorts of vermicides and pesticides, vermicides and parasite cleansing agents to heal the body. But the energy field has an even more important part in that, because if a parasitic entity is in your energy field, that's going to cause you great problems, not just physically, but mentally, and in fact can ruin your entire life. So you have to recall that, well, someone will say, well, I don't see them. Yeah, well, there's lots of things we don't see in our modern world. And you have to really think back into, it's very nice, the two people who actually are in charge of this forest are walking by. It's a forest actually near my house, and it's these two people here are the ones who keep it calm and safe. So it's actually nice to have them here. They're actually very nice people. So anyway, he's going to walk behind me here. Yeah, very nice people, and they keep this place calm and it's in a very good state, given that it's in the middle, sort of in the middle of a town, in the middle of a lot of people. So it's very important, I think, to recognize that you can't see reality in its entirety. This particular space that we are encountering, you see me, you see the forest behind me, you saw the person walk behind me as he was there. But what we see with our eyes is maybe only 2 or 3% of the light spectrum. We're seeing a very small band of light. Carlos Castaneda, I think he described it as, how did he describe it? As emanations of, emanations of the eagle, I think is how he described it. These massive amounts of filaments of light, that very small amounts our perception picks up and generates our world. But that doesn't mean all the other filaments don't exist. You're picking up just a small amount. And even when you add in our senses, even add in the intuition, maybe we're picking up only 10% of what's actually here. That means 90% is constantly not even picked up by our senses, or picked up by our senses in a very minute way. And we're certainly not generating the world. So an organic being, an inorganic being, or parasitic entity is a being without form, but still has intelligence, still has a purpose, and one of their main purposes is to eat the energy of a human being. So let's talk about some of them. 5 different types that I've at least come across and know of, and there might be many, many more, but I'm just going to share what I've got with you. The first are kind of a weaker type, and someone I know called them hitchhikers, is the best way of describing it. They're beings that just sort of jump into your energy field when you're a little bit weak, when you're a little bit low, when you're a little bit stressed, and they just jump in for a while, steal some energy for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, and then they find someone else and they just zip off to somebody else. So they're ones that are just short-term annoying, and you can have many of these. These, a person could have 1, they could have 10. And then the next day they have 8, then they have 2, then they have 0. So you could also kind of see potentially fluctuating energy levels is just telling you how many of these hitchhikers you've picked up in the course of your day. Again, the more clear you can be, the more protected you can be, the more sovereign to your own energy you can be, the less chance you're going to get one of these. The best way to remove those or get them to go is by some sort of purifying scent or sound, or of course a native Indian would probably use sage, burning sage, just around the body to cleanse the energy field. They might burn sweetgrass, some would burn tobacco. In Asia they would burn incense, more likely. You can use various sounds, from whether it be singing bowls, didgeridoos, just bells, all sorts of things can help cleanse them away from the aura. Of course, there's all sorts of aromatherapy type oils and smells, and even exercises that can be done because those are just like travelers. They're just hitching a ride for a while, and they're going to find someone else to hitch onto. A similar type will be a similar type of entity that just lives at a particular location. They're not necessarily nasty, and you'll normally find them in like malls, airports, places that just naturally drain you. It's because these entities have decided, rather than hitchhike on any single person, they're going to hitchhike on a location, and they're just going to quickly jump to anyone that walks by. Boom, get a bit. Boom, get a bit. Boom, get a bit. I know if I'm not aware when I walk through a mall, I can be in a mall for 10 minutes, and by the time I walk out, I'm exhausted. like just wiped out, and it's because of all these little tiny things sucking a tiny bit of energy in the space. So again, it often helps just to, if that does happen to you, again, just get home, similar cleansing things as what you've had before, to just clean those off. If somebody's been doing a lot of work, particularly who might be a therapist or a counselor, excuse me, or someone who is working with having a challenging conversation with a friend, there's always a possibility that that person being at a low energy state, or because people working, in the health field, so they're around people who have an illness of some kind, there could be parasitic entities that again like to try to hitch from them onto you. And again, it can be really good if you're in these kind of fields and you're someone who has to have regular conversations, not just with typical workmates, but with people who are having some difficulty. It can be good to also do a cleansing as soon as you come home, to just running water is another really good cleansing agent, whether it's just under your shower. Of course, in the ancient world, you would have gone under a stream, and best under a small waterfall. And those are also very good cleansing agents. There's also, like I say, there's exercises you can do to also cleanse the aura more. Sea salt is another one. I'm just picking up things off the top of my head. Certain stones I know of, by carrying them particularly. Black tourmaline is a really good energy protection stone and a cleansing stone. I might even have one on me now, a black tourmaline. So those are all recommended for cleaning out these ones. The next type of entity is much more difficult, and that would be a parasitic entity. This is one that is not just a traveler. It's found you personally, and it's going to stick with you right to the end of your life if you don't get rid of it. And these things are, I wouldn't call them certainly evil by any stretch of the imagination. They're just there to steal your energy. So they just want to keep you in a strong enough state that you can keep living, but not and enough that they can drain your energy for themselves, and you will never be able to feel fully strong and strengthened. And they will constantly create experiences in you that will create the kind of emotion that they particularly eat. So some might eat anger, some might eat frustration, some might eat disappointment, some might eat depression, some might eat anxiety, some might eat stress. And they're going to try to create, if they're eating anger, well, they don't need to create depression in you because they can't eat it. They can't eat all of the emotions. There's just certain emotions they can eat. And that's one thing to check out. If you think you have a parasitic entity, watch when you have certain emotions. Do you have an emotion and then not really notice a huge energy drop from having it, but certain emotions, you have the emotion, whatever it is, and after you're just wiped out, you're just exhausted. That's probably the parasitic entity stealing that from you. Again, sometimes it's very hard to track them down, to know they're there personally. That's why a lot of cases you need someone else who has much more experience to help check if you have them, and to help the process of cleaning these away. These are not, you can't just clear these away with some sage and some running water and some salt. You have to do some work to get, especially the longer they've been there, the harder it is they're going to be to remove. And that comes to the first problem in the healing process, is that most healers are not going to even believe they exist, and will never be able to track them down even if you ask them to. So a huge majority of healers can't help you at all. Of the healers that say they can help you, I would say the majority of those, then let's say that's 20% of the 25% of those people out there, they can at least sense them or feel them or know that a person has them. I'm at that place. I'm at a place where I can generally tell if someone probably has one or probably doesn't have one. The third stage is the hardest, and that is to remove them. And that's a very specific process. Some healers can work with parasitic entities if the person hasn't had them for too long, if they've only had them for a year or two. But once you start getting into multiple years or even over decades, it requires a very special knowledge of this and a very special way of doing your practice. So unfortunately, a lot of people go to healers who say they can do it. They pay for the service, they get it done, and they feel better for a few days because they may have weakened it a little bit. They may have weakened the parasite, so it's not stealing energy for a while, so they actually think something's happened. But then a week later, everything's back the way it always was. Nothing's changed. And that's because the actual removal of it is very different than a weakening of it or slowing it down for a short period of time. The next type of being to consider is the demonic entity. And you can call this with any kind of name you want, you know, an alien, an extraterrestrial, and I'm not trying to put this into any kind of, like, you know, religious term either, but certainly all religions and all ancient cultures have their demons and demonic parts of their mythology and their religion. These are the beings that are not just parasitic entities, they're actually there to destroy you. They just don't want your energy. They want to actually destroy the thing that they have. And they are the ones that are able to alter the mind, alter the thoughts, get the person to act in whatever way the demonic entity wants them to act. They're extremely dangerous to have, of course. Personally, they're dangerous to be around if another person has them. Generally, the more of a psychopath or more of just a nasty, evil person a person is, it's most likely not. It's not them. It's not them as a human being. A natural human being doesn't naturally want to hurt anyone, injure anyone, cause anyone any suffering. That's not natural to humans. But it is when they have a demonic being. Then the demonic being is running the show. My father was a psychopath, for example. And my way of being able to understand that time with him and understand the healing process was to see he wasn't acting directly like that. He obviously had a demonic being his whole life that was creating the havoc, of course, in his own life, in his own world, in his own mind, and in the minds and the experiences of all those who were around him. So that's how I got to understand the demonic type parasite from having one attached to a parent. Those require an extremely careful work, and there's very few people out there that can actually get rid of them. I've met a couple of these people. I know even some native medicine men, very, very wonderful medicine men, won't tackle these kind of things. They'll send them to, you might say, even to another elder, where you have to go to a very specific elder on the reservation to handle these kind of things, because they are the sort of expert in that. And if you think you have a demonic being, then you need a real expert in the field. And there are a few out there, I think. There's, of course, like I say, there's a few I've met, and I know there's way more out there that most of them will not necessarily be saying too much publicly. I think they'll be keeping it rather quiet, and you kind of have to know in your community who might be able to do this. Even in certain religious areas, there's still priests / wise people, wise men and women who can still has this ability to do it. I don't want to go into detail of what that's all about. I'm just letting you know that's another kind of parasitic entity. The fourth kind is the one I've just been dealing with, which is an entity that has been sent by another person. And you can think of this more like a thought form. Some thought forms can be projected outward and become manifest as things. Some thought forms can be projected as well, you can send a thought form of joy and beauty to someone. Like if you had someone you really wanted them to succeed, or you really wanted them to do well, or you have such hope for them, you could send, if you crystallize that thought almost, you would send that thought into their energy field and strengthen their life. The parasitic side of it is when someone doesn't like someone, doesn't want them to succeed, and it can be necessarily not conscious. They're not thinking it consciously, but subconsciously it's deep within their system, and they just have this natural ability to throw a thought form into another place. And this is what happened to me. I had a thought form thrown into me many years ago that was making it very, very hard for me to do anything. Actually, it was blocking every roadway I was going to be on. And that can also take quite a while to remove, and it's also quite an amazing thing to see where it came from, and see how my life went from having this kind of thought entity. They're called tupelos, I think. in some Mexican traditions. I don't remember now. But it's a thought form sort of manifested. In this case, not as a manifested being, but as a crystallized thought that moves into another energy field, almost like a black magic spell that's been placed into your energy. So that's another kind you can have, and those also are, you need to get rid of those. The final one, which is very interesting, and I just bumped into it today as I was getting ready to do this, because of course, as I mentioned, I'm in the process of cleaning and healing from the last thing I've had for all of these years. And I happened to be reading one of my threads. It might have been my Cathar thread on stolen history. I'll put the link to make sure that the person who wrote this gets the credit for it. But they were talking about black helicopters, and I've always had a real strange wondering of why they show up when they do and what really their purpose is. And this person's feeling on the black helicopters is that somehow this reality, this matrix, of course, wants to keep the vibrational state low, because the lower the vibrational state is everywhere, the more these parasitic entities have easy access to human energy and to the human and to create the emotions that they want. But if a place or a person begins to raise their energy, begins to raise their vibration, begins to purify and become not at that level, a black helicopter will come by with that. Somehow it has this ability, just by being in the area, to almost like fire off a wave of negative energy, a wave of negative vibration on the area to try to pull it back down. And today, sure enough, after I read this at around 10 o'clock this morning. I knew I was going to be making this video. I was getting very focused, and I had a raising day of energy state, a raising day of health today, and it was okay. This is great. I'm on a really good, having a really good day here. But 30 minutes, 40 minutes after that, black helicopter goes by. But now at least I was aware of it, and so I did my best to just take time, focus on my energy field, don't let the energy change, focus on my home. I'll do another, when I get home after this, I'll do a complete saging down of the house and just cleanse out the energy, try to keep the energy space high. But it was like an amazing confirmation that I just read this morning, and then here 3 or 4 hours later I have the exact experience of the thing flying to, like, literally almost to the point that I could have looked inside the windows if I wanted to. I didn't, of course. I just wanted to stay within my energy. And so yeah, there you go. There's a much longer discussion than I originally thought, but I feel it's important. It's an important thing to at least all of you to not necessarily believe, because again, I don't want to post these videos and want you to believe anything just because I say it, because who am I? You know, yeah, I've done 20, 25 years of really intense practice and stuff, but that doesn't mean I know everything. It certainly doesn't mean I'm right on things. And you need to take what I say as that's the experience of the being sitting here, the revelations that have come, the wisdom for me that has appeared, and then take it into yourself and say, okay, I'm not going to dismiss it because it sounds strange or I don't like it, and I'm not going to accept it because I want to accept it as well. You have to turn it into your own experience, like everything. Turn the knowledge into your own experience. It doesn't matter what it is. Look at it in your own life. And if you don't have anything in your own experience to answer a yes or no to whatever has been presented to you, then you always take it as a possibility. Well, maybe. I'm not going to accept it, but I'm not going to reject it. I'm going to allow to see, especially if it's something that might be affecting me, it has something effect on my life, then I want to examine it a little more deeper and come to my own conclusion, right? Your conclusion and your knowledge is your knowledge. It doesn't have to be mine or anybody else's. Thanks for, again, coming to spend time with me, for listening to what I have to say, for sharing what comes from it, and for subscribing, for liking, for adding comments, and whatever else. I intend to keep this channel completely non-monetized and make it just a place for, as long as the channel will stay up. I assume at some point all of these kind of channels will be taken down, that these kinds of information will no longer be allowed. So for now, take advantage of channels that are like mine, that are trying to share these kinds of information with you. we'll try to get this stuff to as many people as are interested as possible. And thanks again for being around, for listening. And if you have ideas or suggestions for future videos, by all means, let me know that too. I've got 4 or 5 in the sort of planning stages and the researching that I'm getting through here in the next couple of weeks. And then after that, I will be ready for brand new areas and brand new ideas. So I'll have another one coming up in 2 or 3 days for you, and hope this was helpful.